I don't know if there's a single other person in the entire world that gives this much of a shit if there was a Nancy Drew computer game that was somewhat subpar, but I do, and I have an internet connection, and I'm about to make it everyone's problem. Also, I'm completely aware this video is literally an hour and a half. Don't say anything about it. Don't ask me any questions about that, for my sake. So, Nancy Drew Midnight in Salem is a computer game released in 2019 by Her Interactive based on the ever-present pop culture character of Nancy Drew, and it is not very good. So some quick personal context for myself with this series. I started playing these games when I was like 7 or 8. It was like 2009, 2010, and I was all over these things. My first one was Nancy Drew Danger by Design. It took me years to finish it because I was 7 and not that smart at the time. But I have played, I think, every single game except for Tomb of the Lost Queen. So this one's for all my Nancy Drew fans who even know what that means if I haven't played that game. But I have played and finished 95% of these games, and I've spent a lot of time with this series. So when I tell you that I'm going to absolutely rip into Midnight in Salem in this video, I'm being honest. Don't be surprised. This isn't a hot take in the Nancy Drew community for the most part. Nobody really liked it, but I'm just letting you know this franchise is near and dear to my heart, and that will not stop me. So, Midnight in Salem's development was plagued by a lot of developmental issues stemming from the fact that the upper management didn't really understand what a game engine was. So there was a larger than average gap between Midnight in Salem and the previous release by Her Interactive Nancy Drew game standards. It was about 4.5 years when the standard release cycle was 2 games per year, which obviously is a pretty big shift. The game previous to Midnight in Salem was Sea of Darkness, and this delay in the release of Midnight in Salem was a result of both employee and software changes. About half the company got laid off and they switched to Unity. The company was not doing well in 2015 when C was released, so mid was kind of their effort at bouncing back financially. Obviously, my making of this video is very topical because the game is fall themed, Halloween themed, and came out so recently. Oh, wait, no, what's this doing here? If you were around for the rollout of this game, I salute you. It was not pretty. Nobody liked it then. Nobody liked it now. Things did not get better. So before we even get into some of the technical issues with Midnight in Salem and how it's just generally not a very good product, Her Interactive also had a lot of other complicated marketing issues during this time. Not only was the large gap between games something of an anomaly that did not get very well explained to fans, so people were kind of assuming the franchise was dead, and they were not, looking forward to any new releases. They also had the kind of complicated problem of having an aging fan base. The majority of Nancy Drew Games fans these days are either older teens or adults, people who grew up playing the games. There's not a huge amount of new people rolling in, and that can make their demographic targeting hard. Historically, the games are E10 and up, but the majority of people who play it are much older than that. And also, I gotta say, some of those puzzles, like, no 10-year-old was cracking that Shadow at the Water's Edge crazy Sudoku puzzle. Like, that was not happening. Nobody 10 was doing that. So the goal of Midnight in Salem was in some ways to bring in new players to mitigate this problem. However, the game was not all that inviting looking, so it didn't really work out. Her Interactive doesn't seem to be super clued in to their player base, and they don't really seem to understand who is actually still playing these games and is actually still buying them, and that group of people is a bit older now. That said, I don't particularly think the marketing team is thinking too hard about that. This one's for all my bald Nancy Drew fans. They also have the issue that a very, very large amount of Nancy Drew games fans are not really like hardcore gamers, and a lot of them don't play video games outside of the Nancy Drew series at all. And they don't exactly have the most powerful machines, and Nancy Drew is released exclusively on PC. So, you know, if you're gonna switch game engines, you might want to keep that in mind, but they didn't, so that was a problem. I know a lot of people who didn't play Midnight in Salem because they could not play Midnight in Salem because the computer they owned could not run it. Like, just it wouldn't work, you know? And a major appeal of the games was that you could play them on a very average laptop with no issue at all, and the engine switch changed that. So, just going into this, there was a lot of issues with production and marketing and management that contributed to the factors that led the game to turn out the way that it did, and that game development is hard, and it's an unfortunate product of a tough industry and a studio trying their best in spite of that. However, Midnight in Salem is pretty bad. Part 1, the obvious. Well, let's get the elephant in the room out of the way first. If you look at the visuals from Sea of Darkness compared to the visuals of Midnight in Salem, you can see clearly that... Oh, wow, this is actually kind of sad, isn't it? It's not just about graphical fidelity or realism or whatever. That was never what anyone wanted from these games. It was more so that the games had a very good visual style and good visual design that meant, with the exception of a few character models here and there, which, you know, have their own charm as signifiers of the early 2000s, the games have aged exceptionally well 10-20 years down the line. I cannot say the same for Midnight in Salem's visual design. Comparatively, Sea of Darkness, which was, like I said, the game that came out prior to mid 2015, has some of the best visuals in the point-and-click adventure game genre, period. But even if we compare the visuals to games from a few years back, or even from the early 2000s, Midnight in Salem just does not have that same flavor or style or design to it that the previous games did. So, the visuals took a significant turn, obviously, partially due to the switch to Unity with a team that had likely never really worked with it before, combined with a lot of the employees and artists specifically getting cut from the team. But the reason the change is so disappointing is because it's the 32nd, 33rd game in a franchise that's been running for 20 plus years from a studio that is 20 plus years old and has a track record of much better visual work. Also, it costs more than the other games. It's like $21.99 on Steam right now, but at launch, because yeah, I bought it at launch, I remember it being like $30, while every other game was $20 even at launch, which I understand is like inflation because there hadn't been a game in a while and the studio is not doing so hot and probably wanted their money's worth. But because of this price change, it ends up that people were unironically paying more for a worse game on top of a longer wait. And like I said, Her Interactive used to release 2 games a year. 2. And there was a 4 to 5 year wait between Sea of Darkness and Midnight in Salem. So obviously their production cycle is very different now too. So one of the first things to point out here with the game's presentation is the voice actor for Nancy has actually been changed. For all of the previous games it was the same woman, and for the very first time we have a new voice actress, and things are certainly different. Like, I want to be nice, but there's some really stilted delivery in this game from our leading lady, which I don't suspect that to be her fault. I doubt she could have gotten this far in the industry as a professional voice actress if she, like, couldn't do it, and maybe more so an issue with the way she was directed or the context she was given. But either way, it's still pretty bad at some points. Nancy's previous voice actor, she debatably sounded a little bit old for the role, but she still had very charming and human delivery, whereas new Nancy sounds a little bit like the AI voiceover of a nature documentary.
sad that even children are named in the list of those accused witches. Like Abigail Johnson, just 11.
Okay, what's that? Ah, come on! Ow, my toe!
The next thing you notice is that, like we said, the visuals are certainly different. They're kind of not that good on the whole, especially for 2019. The character models are all a bit chunky and don't seem to be well rigged. The shading and texturing are something. A lot of the walls, straight up, like, especially in the house that you start in, no texture, like nothing, like not even like a shadow anywhere, like really nothing. There are a lot of assets and textures that look suspiciously like the default ones, and on the whole it does not have the atmosphere is lost, is what I will say. They did make a pumpkin carving little mini game though, which is really cute and Halloweeny and was a nice little bit of extra effort in the visuals department. The selection noise scared me here. I should mention the sound design and mixing are also not that great. Nancy's phone notifications are like really fucking loud. It's the scariest part of the game. Also, every character sounds like they're speaking in a different room.
Worry about a coven living here in the recent past? Yeah. Why? Just bad taste.
Olivia is quite the local character.
There's also this moment where the thunder is like so ridiculously loud you cannot hear anything else happening in the scene.
And the Loch Ness Monster.
Hey, sounds fun to me.
This thunder is ridiculous.
I'm just gonna call it a night.
You do look kinda... Well, maybe don't video chat with the boyfriend.
That said, aside from Nancy, the voice acting isn't bad at all, at least when it comes to the main cast. There are some NPCs that have, like, crazy delivery, though.
Why are there protesters in a small town like this?
What was that? Did she record her lines in an industrial freezer? What the fuck?
There's also whatever was going on with the evidence computer.
Well,
I think Jason is lying to us.
That was
I'm hoping the CCTV footage will prove it.
so
bad
loud.
news. The footage isn't sorted.
There's this moment when there's these protesters outside the courthouse in the game, and you're on about day 3, and they've left at this point, but for like a minute while you're talking to one of the characters inside the courthouse, they're there as background noise and then immediately disappear again as soon as the conversation's over.
They're skipping through the halls this time?
I've just realized that this case has taken a turn.
About time. How do you figure?
Wait, the protesters are gone. Why could I hear them in the background of Deirdre talking? Oh, hey.
The music volume is also really inconsistent depending on which song is playing. Sometimes it's so loud you can't hear the dialogue. So, in this game about Salem, Massachusetts, you start in Austria, obviously. This portion of the game serves as the tutorial phase for controls and mechanics and dialogue. You start off in this like dusty room in a castle in Austria somewhere, and you're talking to this historian that Nancy's dad knows for like some reason, and because they didn't want to model and animate this character, she only shows up as an ominous dark figure you see through the crack in a door. She refuses to enter the room you're in because she thinks it's haunted. She's like, there are ghosts, but if there are ghosts, they're definitely in that room. Which I don't know why she says this, because it's like an office or some shit, but like, whatever. Nancy says something really cringe in response.
One, but they are non-corporeal by definition.
God, okay.
Yeah, thanks, Nancy. Really cleared that up. So the controls are pretty awkward, so after stumbling your way through this room, suddenly you get mugged. Just kidding. It's a thief with a fruity smoke bomb and a chase sequence of questionable intensity.
Elizabeth! Elizabeth! Hey! What are you doing? What? The book! They took the book!
Wow.
Stop! Stop running!
Here we go.
Gotta move slowly. Come on. No!
Not another. Hello? They could not have gotten far.
Gotta figure out which way they went. Must be a clue here.
Well, probably forward. What do you mean?
This canister looks to have been used as a...
Then you teleport to Salem, Massachusetts, and your old friend Deirdre frenemy, Deirdre Shannon, debriefs you.
And that's it.
Oh.
A fire? Was anyone hurt?
It's still
Happened
smoking.
In the middle of the night. No one was there, thankfully. The house wasn't completely destroyed, but the person who lived there had to move out.
Weird editing aside, the game looks like ass. This was released in 2019, by the way. Like I said, ugh. Nancy's voice actress does not have the best material to work with in these scenes, but she is somehow making it sound even more unnatural.
Perry's. Parry.
Oh, like in fencing.
Great. Okay.
Tegan is
Alright.
the older one.
This is when it becomes even more clear just how bad everything looks. The castle actually looked okay, even if some of the foliage animation was a little janky. This actually actively hurts the storytelling in some areas, as some things don't look the way they are intended to.
The figure of a Puritan woman accused of being a witch. These were ordinary people, just like anyone else.
She looks like she eats skin, actually. Ordinary doesn't quite cover what she's got going on.
Low-key, I think she is a witch! Anyway, you're in Salem because Deirdre's cousin, May Perry, has been accused of setting a historic building on fire and won't talk to anyone or help herself at all in this investigation, and Deirdre's hit a dead end and doesn't know how to stop her cousin from getting convicted of arson. So she calls in Nancy. Part 1.5, Movement and Gameplay. So it's not great.
We're hovering an inch above the ground right now.
If we're going to work side by side, you'd better learn to keep up with me.
Hover faster.
And neither are the facial expressions. Deirdre and Tegan especially tend to have very intense looks on their faces.
They both have, like, madness in their eyes. This is kind of frightening.
The navigation is upsetting, frankly.
Wow, you get right up in her business. Okay. There's no stopping in the middle of this room.
The movement can be really unintuitive, and it's just not clear at all where the arrow will take you.
Didn't... Oh god. Oh god. Can I not go this way? What? Oh my god. Oh goodness me. Oh. I guess not. This is a very weird way. Like, why wouldn't you let me just go to right here and have the door be locked? And like this, like nothing to interact with, but like I can just go there. Just for like intuitive navigation, right? Instead of the first step I take off the stairs is this? Like, what? Ah.
Despite my battle with the stairs, there's also literally nothing to look at upstairs. This happens very frequently, and you will probably see this throughout a lot of the background footage for this video. So the navigation was kind of kicking my ass, actually, and the difficulty of navigation is not helped by the fact that later on, when Deirdre joins you as a companion, she becomes something of a jump scare every time you turn around.
Oh god! I didn't mean to click that way. I was trying to look at the pumpkin.
The camera just really isn't your friend in this experience. They overcorrect for this in the next game, Mystery of the Seven Keys, and now Nancy exclusively moves in a dead sprint. This also gave many people motion sickness. I've heard this both from friends who played the game, and it frequently comes up in community posts. Part 2. Where are the puzzles? There are like 4 puzzles in this puzzle game. Okay, well, that's an exaggeration, but still. A lot of the ones that are there are a little too simple, all things considered.
What a clever desk. It even comes with a labyrinth.
What a clever desk. Is this supposed to be hard? What?
Easy.
Yeah, it's really easy.
The most difficult part of this one was the mouse tracking, and not the puzzle itself.
This puzzle's easy, the controls are just bad.
Still got it.
There's a puzzle you do in the courthouse evidence room later on in the game that was very strange. Nancy randomly came to conclusions based on information I didn't have.
Huh.
A CCTV camera. There might be the break-in was staged. The thief must have come in through the door.
What just happened?
And the controls for the evidence cabinet puzzle were so bad I had to look them up. I already had the solution, I just needed Nancy to acknowledge it. The game says use the evidence list, so when I opened a drawer, I fully looked at the evidence list. But what it actually wanted me to do was pick it up and use it on the drawer, which is not the worst way to solve a puzzle, but was also not clear at all.
So, because I just read the sheet, and then... Alright, so I have to go to... In order to get the game to progress, what do I have to do? Tegan's. I have to do 6, 11, and 18. Okay.
No. Interesting.
Okay.
There's this stupid ass cipher puzzle that I'll get to later. The CCTV puzzle you have to do is fine, but it's also like really clearly a guy you know in the footage, and Deirdre is kind of just like,
Oh, what a shame we can't figure out who the guy in the video is. If only we knew a white blonde man with an undercut who wears a polo tucked into his pants with a tight belt and a sweater draped over his shoulders. Too bad we don't know anyone like that.
in the like back fifth of the game, there's like over half a dozen puzzles just back to back to back to back after 4 or 5 total over the course of the entire game. So the pacing on that's a little weird. You also randomly have a paper you need for this pressure plate puzzle towards the end of the game. It seems like they forgot to write in a reason for you to have it, because you're playing as Frank Hardy at this point, and Nancy is the one who has this paper, but Frank needs it to solve this puzzle, and he doesn't have it. It was in Nancy's inventory, and she never talked about it to the Hardy Boys at all, so they just add in some random voice lines where Joe says he just stole it for no reason.
Why do...
How come we have this? I don't remember picking this up.
I like riddles, so I borrowed it from Nancy.
Oh, does she know you took it?
Stop daydreaming, guys. Get cracking on this thing.
Just random throwaway dialogue to explain why we inexplicably have this letter. Yeah, okay.
Part 3. The story. So, after the intro and the setup, you sort of just fumble around and talk to various people and solve like one puzzle. The game has a lot of characters relative to its runtime, and it feels a bit stretched thin in that department. The Hardy Boys just kind of show up after the first in-game day, which is about 2-ish hours in, which I like them, but the game already has so many characters. Counting the Hardy Boys and not counting Nancy or phone contacts, Midnight in Salem has about 10 characters. For comparison, Last Train to Blue Moon Canyon, another Nancy Drew game in which the Hardy Boys appear, excluding phone contacts and Nancy and counting the Hardy Boys, there are 7 characters. You sort of fuck about and ask people for alibis and fix a few things, but that's about it. You know, and this takes hours. You are asking for people's alibis for hours. And even when something does happen, it's usually for a confusing reason, or it's only kind of related to the main plot. Like how the Hardy Boys just happen to be in Boston and show up just because they feel like it, no other reason. Or how when the Perry house gets graffitied later on in the game, it's because someone found out Tegan is distantly related to one of the guys who accused someone of witchcraft in like the 1600s in Salem, which isn't really related to May or the Hathorn house being burned down. So it's a little bit weird. It gets tied in later as the culprit trying to lessen the group that Tegan's running having a claim to the Hawthorne house, but like it's still like weirdly and only tangentially related. It feels like the game is self-consciously looking for a way to spend its time before the climax, which leads to very bizarre things happening for no reason at all. You know, this means we do fun things like decode someone's grocery list in the middle of the night that they buried in a graveyard for no reason. I'm serious, it's not important and it never comes up again. And then you mass hallucinate a ghost together after taking a tea break in the middle of said graveyard.
So, okay, they ran into her coming out of the woods and she was like, whoa, let's brew some tea on this crypt. And then they did. She happened to have 3 mugs, travel mugs on her, and they brewed tea in the cemetery and drank it, just standing right there, just cuz. And then Joe starts tweaking, and then they all immediately see a ghost. After we deciphered her chore list. After I spent all that time in the graveyard fucking about, finding out about stuff we already knew she was doing, decoding her chore list, and then drinking some tea. Great way to spend my fucking time. Yeah.
Okay.
This also means there's a lot of really pointless dialogue that goes on forever.
Dutch? Everything okay?
What in the Sam heck is a Bitcoin?
Oh god.
Bitcoin? It's a cryptocurrency.
A what?
It's a decentralized digital currency.
All these new made-up digital things just go too far, if you ask me. Nothing's ever been wrong with good old American Benjamins.
As you know, I want to investigate.
Why the fuck are we talking about
Could
this?
you give me the code for the keypad?
Oh, yeah.
Love a good ticking clock. As long as it's not a time bomb.
That's not funny. Shut the fuck up.
Plus this interaction between Nancy and Deirdre that I find indecipherable.
You really think this was intentional? And not some, you know, accidental ingestion?
If you look at all the evidence, yes.
No.
Olivia's jacket at the crime scene, the spray painting of the Perry house, everyone's obsession to get May convicted.
You know what all these people have in common?
What?
They're women.
Are you saying they're all witches, or that this is a witch hunt?
I'm saying it's Salem.
What?
One thing that happens that's kind of topical is that the literal small army of people you have working on this case at some point figure out that all these ghost sightings that are occurring in town, but only to very specific people, are likely being caused by ergot poisoning in a food or water supply somewhere, and we need to figure out where. The ergot is a reference to a theory about what might have caused some of the paranoia and delusion in the original 1692 witch trials, which this game references frequently and heavily, and maybe, dare I say, a little bit too much. There are lots of little historical details of dubious reliability like this sprinkled throughout.
The carefully researched genealogy of several accused witches. Their names weren't fully cleared until 2001.
Like, legally, you mean? I think we know they weren't witches by 2001, right? They got cleared in 2001, huh? Seems like we had other things to worry about in 2001 as a nation.
Story interlude, the AWBS. So in the game, there's this group called the AW Group, which stands for Accused Witches, which is run primarily by Tegan Perry, the older sister of May Perry, the girl who was accused of starting the fire. And it is essentially a group of people who are, like, distantly related to the people who got accused of witchcraft 300 years ago. And they're basically claiming that they deserve the Hathorn house, the house that was set on fire, because they were related to some people who were wronged by the guy who used to own the land 300 years ago. Which I feel like I don't need to explain how that is, like, a crazy legal claim to be making, just, like, logistically. But it also kind of morally is not that sound either when you get into the context surrounding the current ownership of the Hawthorne house. Like, this is my subjective opinion on this story beat and my, like, ethical take on it, I guess, more so than, like, a super objective story structure criticism. But, like, this house, someone lives in it. Like, it's somebody's house that you're trying to take from them. Like, this isn't, like, state property. This is, like, someone's actual personal residence, first of all. Second of all, the people in the AW organization are so far removed from the people that were hurt that it's completely lost on me. Like, do the British owe me, an Irish person, reparations because they handled the potato famine badly? Like, I don't know, man. Those events don't affect these people today. They only know about it at all because they took, like, a genealogy test or something. It's not like, I don't know, slavery that still has, like, a trickle-down effect on black people in America today. Think, you know, slavery, segregation, prison industrial complex, etc., for a very simplified explanation of that. Which I know is a strong pivot to take, but this actually comes up later on because it is canon that Tegan's ancestors also owned/enslaved Lauren's ancestors, Tituba, who was the first witch accused, so write that down. She was also one of the accused witches, the first one, and also a slave, and also related to Lauren, who currently lives in the house. So if anybody... Anyway, just remember that, okay? It's important.
See, that's fucked up. Tegan's ancestors were slave owners and they owned Lauren's ancestors, and now Tegan is trying to kick Lauren out of her house? Tegan is like a supervillain. Like, what the fuck is this?
So, if anybody deserves reparations and that damn house, it's Lauren. The claim here just does not work. It's actually sort of telling that the quote-unquote compelling evidence gets stolen from the evidence room and we never see it, because legally it just does not work that way. You could maybe make a case to turn it into a historical landmark or a historically protected building if it's not already, but then it would just go to the state or just stay Lauren's. It would not go to a specific individual or organization. It just doesn't work that way, because then land ownership would get so unmanageably messy if we let stuff like that slide. Part story interlude thing number whatever, the horror. So the horror's not great. The atmosphere certainly suffers from the visual design. It's just a little too sterile to be creepy, and there's a lot of really cheap jump scares.
Cutscene time. Whoa. What was that? Is this supposed to be rain? This is some really saturated rain, color-wise. Oh my god, wait. Cute. Pick up the phone.
Not at all.
It's not. Pick up the phone, girl. The guy who's sexier than your boyfriend is calling.
Nancy.
The horror moments in this game are genuinely so weirdly timed.
More. It just so happens that ghost hunting is our specialty.
Wait, what?
We're not passing on a chance like this. Be there before you know it.
Only if you really want to. Talk to you later.
Dude, they pull up for her so much harder than her actual boyfriend does. Oh no, the ceiling's having a period.
Yeah?
Good morning, sunshine.
What time is it?
It's early. Hurry up, get dressed, and meet me downstairs.
What's this
I have something to cheer you up.
song?
I'm being for real, this is completely unedited. This is just the order they decided to put these events in. Also, there's like an immediate loading screen, like instantaneously after about 80% of the jump scares.
Right there!
I don't...
And I have another interlude, and this time, it's about Ned.
Ned! Hi!
Nance, how have you been? Thanks for finally picking up.
Sorry, I've been on a flight.
Busy on another case, huh? You know, you should really enjoy yourself more, Nance. Life's too short to be working all the time.
This isn't work for me. It's fine.
Is he at the club?
Besides, time doesn't take a vacation. Speaking of which, how's yours?
Ned, come on.
Yeah, 1 second.
Sounds like you're having fun.
You know, standard fare. Nothing too crazy. I miss you, Nance.
I miss you,
Hey, give it back.
too.
Nancy, I'll call you later.
Call you later, Nancy.
Well, that was...
Like deadass implied to maybe be cheating, kind of. I'm not sure, and it absolutely never gets addressed. They never talk about it. They never say anything about it. He also really sounds like he does not want to go on vacation with Nancy, even though she keeps bringing it up over and over and over again, and she just doesn't notice at all.
Can we go on vacation, just you and me, together for once?
Vacation? Why, I just got off fall break.
Yeah, I know, but next break. Will you go with me?
Of course, I'd love to. I'm there, but...
No excuses. We'll think of something fun to do.
And for context, in Sea of Darkness, the previous game, they literally said, "I love you" for the first time, and we're on like the best terms they've ever been. So this is kind of whiplash. Although in that game, Ned was also initially pissy with Nancy for missing date night because she had to solve a time-sensitive missing persons case, so do what you will with that. They also backpedal a ton in the next game, Mystery of the Seven Keys, and get like weirdly defensive about Nancy and Ned's relationship and about how great it is, even though they were the ones who wrote Ned to be like a crap boyfriend in the previous game, but they were like super defensive and pissy because people were like, whoa, that wasn't cool. And they were like, no, he's perfect, even though they wrote him like that. It was really weird. Interlude for the Ned interlude. I like Frank Hardy better. It's frequently hinted at in the game series that Frank has a crush on Nancy, and he is always conspicuously nonchalant about Nancy's relationship with Ned.
Oh, nothing gets past you.
I literally never heard of
on his
it.
toes.
Well, to be honest, I haven't really talked to him lately.
Oh, really? Yeah, us neither.
Salem's pretty close to Bob.
It's also implied in this game that Ned worries about Frank and seems to know that he likes Nancy.
The Hardy Boys are here and...
Oh, really? Both of them?
Yeah. You know, they're kind of a team.
Frank?
Yeah. Both of them. Like I said.
Alright.
Good. They'll look out for you.
This whole Frank having a crush on Nancy thing comes up quite frequently, actually, most notably in The Captive Curse and The Deadly Device. And they spend a lot of time setting this up, and it seems like it's never going to go anywhere because they backpedaled so hard in Mystery of the Seven Keys. You know, for a game studio that shook things up so much with this release, they are very weirdly attached to the status quo when it comes to Nancy and Ned. Plus, I just like Frank. I think he's cute. I just like him a lot better.
I like Frank a lot more than I like Ned. Is all I'm saying. Like, they did this in Deadly Device too, but like they keep teasing at the fact that Frank like is clearly into Nancy, even if maybe she's insufferable in this game. I get it in the other ones, but like, and Ned fucking sucks in this game. And like, just put her with Frank. Just do it. Just do the Francie. Like, I don't understand why we need. I don't know, if we're gonna keep, like, hinting at this, like, plausible whatever, and then you're also gonna make Ned, like, a shitty boyfriend for the entirety of the game, like, it seems reasonable, like, that's where we're going, right? Except, no it isn't, because in the next game they backpedal super hard, and they're like, Ned is such a great boyfriend, I love him so much, I would never leave him for anything, and it's like, why are you acting like you wrote this game? You made this game too. You are responsible for Ned being a shitty boyfriend and for Frank being the better option. And also, like, you were the one who made him into Nancy, and you're the one who made Ned a crap boyfriend. So why are we getting like bitchy and defensive in the next game because the fan reaction was "fuck Ned, I like Frank"? Because that's what you wrote. That's the game you made. And
this is the last story interlude, I promise. So Nancy is like really annoying in this game, to put it lightly. She gives Deirdre so much shit for making this joke about crime, and then immediately starts using the skill set that she learned from breaking and entering.
Become my enemy if I committed a crime?
Sorry. You shouldn't joke about that.
Why? You gonna arrest me?
oh my god, Nancy.
No, but I'd call the police to report you. I'd also recommend you a decent lawyer, because I'm an excellent witness for the prosecution.
Wow.
I'm a lawyer's daughter, Deirdre. Don't mess with me. Hello?
Like, if you became a criminal, I'd be your enemy, and then we immediately start picking locks. Like, that's not a crime 90% of the time. Nancy's a thief and a trespasser constantly, and you're gonna give Deirdre an earful about how, like, you shouldn't joke about being a criminal. I'm a lawyer's daughter, Deirdre, don't mess with me. Girl, you are a felon. The only reason you can still vote is because your dad's a lawyer.
It's literally a running joke in the fandom that Nancy is a menace and something of a kleptomaniac who has very little regard for the law. So this whole scene makes her come off really self-righteous and hypocritical. Like, in previous games, Nancy has done things like steal and break into crime scenes. She's been in several car chases, and slight spoilers, but in the very first Nancy Drew game, Secrets Can Kill, the original, the solution to the final puzzle was Nancy pulling a gun on someone. She's also weirdly really freaked out about her ghost sighting that she has on like day 1 or 2 of the game. But she has been through way worse in Thornton Hall with Ghost of Thornton Hall. Shout out Ghost of Thornton Hall. That game Nancy experiences some very unexplained hauntings. And she also sleeps in, like, the most haunted part of the house, and is just, like, chilling. Like, she actually gets killed by the ghost a few times if you fuck up, and, like, she's just chilling. But in this game, she's losing her mind because she saw a ghost, and it's, like, totally shaking up her view on, like, you get an achievement, you get a Steam achievement that says Nancy's beliefs are challenged. And it's like, was Ghost of Thornhill a joke to you? You get, like, the ghost can physically kill you in that game and they never explain it. Nancy has definitely been through worse. She also, actually, I said she sleeps in the most haunted part of the house. That's a lie. She doesn't sleep. She mysteriously passes out every night and it's out of her control. Okay, interludes are over. Back to talking about the regular story of the game. Okay, so I know that was like a massive detour, but we're back on track now. We're back to the story. We left off talking about the ergot poisoning, and so during this portion of the game, you are literally just like running around and asking people about like random stuff. Like, you don't really, like, I'm actually trying to think of like things to list off to like summarize what happens at this point in the story, but like it literally is just walking in circles and talking to the same people about nothing. But anyway, as you're doing this pointless mucking about, you engage in some conversation with Tegan at the museum, because Tegan works at the museum, and you get this absolute bombshell dropped on you that May canonically got convicted of arson at age 9 after an old shed caught fire while she was in it.
May was about 9 or so. She was in it one night. She shouldn't have been. Playing with candles, a lighter, I don't know. It caught fire. She was charged.
She was so young.
Charged?
Responsible. She shouldn't even have been there, and I'm the older sister.
It's not your fault. I'm sorry to upset you. It helps me to understand.
Just don't talk to May about it, please.
They charged a 9-year-old who was in an old shed with arson? It was like a rickety old shed and she was playing with candles, and she was 9, and they charged her with, they convicted her of they convicted a 9-year-old. Convicted? Because a rickety old shed burned down, they convicted a 9-year-old of arson.
There was this,
And when you actually get to talk to May about this fire towards the end of the game later on, it turns out she didn't even start it. It wasn't even her fault. She was the only victim as well. She's the only person who got hurt. She did not start the fire. It was actually Tegan and her friends who accidentally started the fire. They knocked a candle over or something. But Tegan still lies about it and says May was there alone, like playing with matches or something. I don't know. She wasn't supposed to be there. But May didn't start the fire. She got horrifically burned in the fire, and then they convicted a 9-year-old of arson, and Tegan just, like, kept up the bit the whole time.
Hold on. This is the second fire that Tegan started that May got blamed for. Right, because she startled them and they knocked over the candles. And then they locked her in on accident. So it was one big accident. But Tegan should know that, right? After the fire burned her sister, that when Tegan was involved in another accidental fire and her sister was getting blamed again, what? Why would she not? She's letting her sister take the fall for a fire again. Okay, Why did May get convicted of arson at age 9 if what happened was she startled someone and they knocked over a candle, and then she was the only victim? And was also 9. Why did they convict her? Why did they convict her? They convicted a 9-year-old of arson when the 9-year-old in question was the only victim and also wasn't even the one who lit the fire? What kind of town is this?
Also, who was pressing charges? Like, genuinely, who pressed charges against the 9-year-old for arson? The whole thing is so bizarre, and it reads like the game wants May to have this troubled past and this tragic backstory, but in their efforts to make a, like, quote-unquote rebellious delinquent character, they are too, like, petrified of writing a character who's actually done something wrong. Like, they're so afraid that if she's done something too bad, the audience and the player won't like her or won't want to help her. So they watered it down. She receives ridiculously harsh consequences for what amounts to a tragic accident that she was the sole victim of. Anyway, after finding out that crazy bit of information that the game absolutely does not linger on long enough for my taste, you kind of end up in this whirlwind of information in the back half of the game. Not even the back half, it's like the back fifth. You really don't do anything for the front heavy portion of this experience, but while you're looking into the ergot poisoning, you find, conveniently just out and about, like a bunch of documents on Alicia's desk. I haven't even said who Alicia is yet, have I? Oh, maybe we should do that first. So this is like lightning round context for people who did not matter in the game at all until like the very end. There's Alicia. Last name I don't fucking remember and I don't care. She is the only lawyer in town, and she is one of the 2 employees at the local courthouse, the other being Judge Danforth, the one who was really confused about Bitcoin for some reason earlier in this game. She is a snarky modern woman, and she is a slightly stereotypical lawyer in terms of her positions on ethics, but whatever. Judge Danforth is just like a dude. Like, he's actually just like a regular man. There's not much remarkable about him. He's old friends with Nancy's dad, and that's why she knows him and whatnot. But, like, other than that, he really, like, he just, like, doesn't do anything, and you have to do a few things for him. But that is, like, the extent of his importance in this story for the most part. That, and technically, for whatever reason, he has, like, legal, like, jurisdiction over who gets the Hathorn house. Like, he gets to go over the like, I don't know that, I don't think that's how judges, like, if it's not a court case, I don't know why the judge is doing, I don't know, maybe they just don't have a lot of public servants in this town. It's really unclear why he's in charge of that, actually, but whatever. So you have Judge Danforth, you have Alicia, you have Judge Danforth's son, Jason Danforth, who I haven't mentioned at all up to this point because he doesn't even show up until, like, past the halfway point in the game, and he doesn't do anything. He does rob the evidence room before the game starts. And you can see him really clearly in the footage in that evidence room puzzle I talked about earlier. And Nancy and Deirdre are like, who could it be? And it's like, definitely Jason. But you don't even really talk to him about that until, like, the very, very end of the game. So you don't, like, he's just, like, hanging around for, like, all of this game. He's not doing anything. And then you see that footage, and then you are like, shucks, I guess we're stuck on this one. And then there's Olivia, who is, like, a street magician, and she's the one who buried her grocery list in the graveyard. She doesn't do anything else in this story. I'm racking my brain right now trying to come up with a single thing she does. she really doesn't. She really doesn't do anything. So you find a bunch of documents just sitting out, open air, plain air, on Alicia's desk that basically prove that she's been poisoning Lauren's water with ergot. She's got like a plan of the water supply system to the Hathorn house, and like, so like there's like a document that's like a notice of demolition or something, like she's gonna knock it down, which is like, I don't know why she has that, because Alicia is technically Lauren's lawyer for keeping the Hathorn house, which obviously you can see why your lawyer poisoning your water might be a concern and why that might be a problem. But even that aside, I don't know why a lawyer would have a notice of demolition. Like, not an appraisal. Not like what is it? Like a quote on how much it would cost to demolish the house. It's like a notice of demolition, or so. I don't know, the phrasing on it's weird, but she has this, and it's like a secret. Lauren doesn't know about it, and yet it's just sitting open on her desk with the door to her office open, just sitting there. So you don't really investigate much. I was actually sincerely just looking for Alicia when I stumbled upon those papers. Anyways, shortly after this, Tegan calls you and says May has gone missing, and after this point in the story, it is like a complete deadfall into the finale. So you go back to the Perry house after Tegan calls you, and you like hang out in the kitchen for a bit, and then Tegan randomly confesses to setting the fire in the Hathorn house just out of nowhere. Which, side note, the inciting incident / main mystery is who set fire to this goddamn house, and you don't even get to solve it, or even get close to solving it. We have no evidence or reason to suspect Tegan. She just like straight up tells you after a while. And this stands out because there are 2 previous games, Alibi and Ashes and Ghost of Flirton Hall, that also have fires / arsons as like main components to their mystery. And those crimes actually get solved. There is actually, like, you actually have to figure out who set those fires. After that, you start to get a move on because you're going to go look for May. There's also a humongous storm brewing outside. It's, like, allegedly raining really hard. It's kind of hard to tell in-game. But as you're leaving, Deirdre gets, like, really mad at you for unclear reasons. She's, like, totally chilling with you 1 second and then, like, loses her mind the next.
The storm got worse. Really? As if we need more rain right now.
We're going wherever May is, rain or not. This isn't going to stop us, right?
Right.
Hey, what's going on?
Long story. When am I not? Hey, wait for me.
Nah, I've had enough of this.
What?
Us? We don't work well together. Everything about this is wrong.
This is so random.
What are you talking about? We just solved the crime.
I called you because I needed you to connect with May to prevent this from happening.
I couldn't. She was avoiding me.
The one thing I wanted from you, you couldn't deliver.
Okay.
Deirdre.
And speaking of Deirdre, I don't really have anywhere else to put this, but I feel like it's worth mentioning that Deirdre is so much more interesting and likable, despite being canonically more of a bitch, in Alibi and Ashes and The Deadly Device, 2 other previous games, than she is in Midnight in Salem. In Deadly Device especially, I think she has a really interesting dynamic with Nancy, and she's only a phone contact in that game, so not super relevant, but like, I just want to say, Deirdre is better than this. Deirdre's a better character than this. She's been better than this. I hope she will be better than this in the future. She's not great in this game. So after Deirdre loses her shit on you for very unclear reasons, Jason materializes, like, for even more unclear reasons, directly in front of the Perry house.
Okay, so Deirdre has to randomly get mad at us and fuck off for no reason because we need to be alone with Jason Danforth, and they couldn't think of a different way for them to get separated. They couldn't think of, like, a better reason for Deirdre to be mad, or, like, a more neutral reason for them to split up. Like, that was absolute dog shit. Sorry.
So you get in the car with Jason because Deirdre drove off without you. And he tells you a bunch of stuff about his friendship with May while he drives you to the courthouse for some reason. I don't know why he takes you there. But you get a very nice sequence of the background not fully rendering as this happens. And then as soon as he parks, we just happen upon a plane ticket to Austria, or from Austria, his plane ticket from Austria, because he was the one who mugged us. Surprise, Jason was the one with the weird little smoke bombs. They're blue for no reason. Canon. But he was the one who did all that, and he kept his plane ticket and just left it in his glove compartment. So Nancy gets out of the car and confronts him about this, and he admits to doing Alicia's quote-unquote dirty work and has a vague money problem, which I think is debt, but they just won't really get specific with it. The important part is that he tells you that May is in the tunnels under Salem and has the Book of Apologies, the book that we got robbed of in the opening sequence in Austria. Nancy and the Hardy Boys go into the tunnels and eventually split up, with the boys finding Deirdre and the will, while Nancy finds May. The Hardy Boys take the will and Deirdre and escape the tunnels, while Nancy and May run to a second room from the first room they're in to escape like a rising water level from the rain of the storm. But the weird thing here is that the water has ergot in it for some reason, even though we established it was specifically Lauren's tap water that was poisoned and not the town's water, much less the rain water that's flooding the tunnels. But whatever. They just really wanted you to hallucinate the ghost during this part. So once you're chilling in the second room in the tunnels, May admits to Nancy that she knew that Tegan started the fire at the Hathorn house and never said anything to protect her older sister. And so we'll get into that later. Trust I have a few opinions on that. But you do a couple more puzzles, and Nancy and May escape the tunnels and very conveniently emerge at the courthouse at the exact same time the Hardy Boys and Deirdre show up. And then the final confrontation begins, and it's really boring. Alicia and Judge Danforth are going over who gets the Hathorn house right up until their midnight deadline, because for some reason they're really agonizing over this one. And as you start asking a few questions and confronting them about things, Alicia randomly starts saying these like evil adult dialogue lines like, "Run along before your PB&Js get cold." Like, cold? What do you mean cold? It's a PB&J. Like, Alicia, what are you talking about? Nancy says, "So you admit it?" like 8 times, like some kind of insufferable debate bro. But we just go back and forth for like a long time, and it's fine. Like, we definitely get into the meat of the very little that happened in this game, but it does not hold a candle compared to previous endings. So I guess quick spoiler warning for the ending of Secret of the Old Clock, Danger by Design, Danger on Deception Island, and Last Train to Blue Moon Canyon, if you are interested in playing these much better gaming experiences. Secret of the Old Clock's finale is a car chase where you chase the culprit into smashing into a pie truck. Danger on Deception Island's ending involves using a military-trained orca to give the culprit a concussion while on a ship full of illegal smugglers. Last Train to Blue Moon Canyon's finale consists of operating a decrepit minecart system at breakneck speed. And Danger by Design's ending is the only Nancy Drew game to have the finale be a boss fight. Lots of other Nancy Drew games have timed puzzles or tricking the culprit or some kind of chase scene or escaping as part of the finale as well. And compared to all that, this is literally just standing around and having a like partially civil conversation. So about halfway through this conversation, despite Alicia being like the true villain here, who's like actually hurting people and tricking people, and like for some reason her motive is really weird. She wants to demolish the Hathorn house to build real estate. Sorry, I got really close to the mic there. She wants to build real estate there, and she also wants to buy the land, but it's like, she's going to so much trouble to just invest in real estate where she could do it in various other locations that aren't legally historically protected. It's not really how that, I don't really like it. It's kind of bad in my opinion. But despite Alicia being like the real bad guy here, Nancy just like pivots and starts ripping into the judge like way too hard, in my opinion, when he's not even the culprit of the main mystery, just like an idiot. Like, Alicia did way worse, but Nancy rips into Judge Danforth way harder for being like presumptuous, right? He just kind of, he was like, he jumped to conclusions about May. He thought she was like a delinquent in trouble or something, which, whatever, you know, like, haters gonna hate. What can you do? But Nancy is like really mad at him for not quote unquote interviewing May and gathering actual evidence on her being the main suspect in an arson, which true, but this is a bit weird to me because last I checked, that's not what judges do. Like, they don't interview like, I don't think that's his job, but whatever. Even the Justin Bieber lookalike robbing us in Austria was more significant, I fear. Like, he did not do anything half as bad as the other people in this game. Alicia actually ends up falling into the trap of being a slightly stereotypical, unethical lawyer and the main culprit on top of that, while Jason is like her lackey and Tegan is the one who started the actual fire. The judge, Nancy's just like really pissed at him. It's kind of inconsistent characterization for the judge as well, because like, he's very reasonable and friendly and conversational most of the time and just randomly despises May for like it doesn't track with any other part of his characterization, which I suspect this is because her interactive was attempting to do some kind of witch hunt and evil judge parallel to the 1692 witch trials and undercommitted to that. There are 3 endings in this game. Either 1, Lauren gets the house, 2, Tegan / the accused witches organization gets the house, or 3, they quote unquote share it. You get each by presenting either or both the Book of Apologies or Frances Tuttle's will. Frances Tuttle was the person who owned Hathorne House previously. I didn't talk about her yet, did I? Okay. Real quick, Frances Tuttle was the adoptive mother of Lauren Holt, who currently lives in the Hathorne House, who died 2 or 3 months prior to the events of the game and left her will in the house, but nobody could find it, and that's why there's this big custody battle over who gets the house, which was a really important context I should have mentioned earlier, but here we are. This game is not very focused, so I don't know why I should be. Either way, you get these endings by either presenting the Book of Apologies with a list of accused witches, or presenting the will, or presenting both, and depending on which one you pick, different people get different amounts of ownership of the house. As far as I'm concerned, any ending in which Lauren does not maintain full and sole ownership of that house, as per Frances Tuttle's wishes, is a bad ending. Okay? If you do the whole share the house thing, they don't actually share it, they just give it to Lauren, and then they add a memorial for the witches, which is, I fear, something they could have done anyway, if they had just asked Lauren nicely instead of tried to kick her out of her house. Just a thought. But the real kicker is, if you present the Book of Apologies and not Frances Tuttle's will, the accused witches organization gets the house, and they demolish it. They demolish the house, sell the land, and split the profits. All this talk about history. All this talk about justice. This shit is evil. Lauren ends up couch surfing and living with her friends until she can find somewhere to live, if you pick this ending. Each of these 3 endings also has the slight variation of whether or not Tegan gets arrested or gets community service. The ending where she's arrested is treated as more of a quote-unquote bad ending, and some people are mad at Nancy even though Tegan did, 1, commit breaking and entering, and 2, attempted burglary and theft of legal documents, and 3, unintentional arson/property damage. So crimes were committed, and obviously, as we heard earlier, Nancy takes crime very seriously. But for some reason, after all of Nancy's preaching in this game about law and order, if you let her face the consequences of her actions without standing up for her, it's the worst end, which is ironic. To be clear, it's not that bad. Tegan herself is not very mad at you, but May definitely is. And generally speaking, everyone's a little bit happier, and the ending feels a little bit more like that was the way it's supposed to be when you stand up for Tegan's character and let her get off with community service. You can also lie to the judge. You can say she set the fire on purpose, which is like crazy. But she did fully, that's the thing I didn't mention earlier, is that Tegan didn't just set the fire in the Hathorn house. She broke in to look for the will so she could possibly steal it so her organization could have a stronger claim to the land. And in the process, she accidentally burnt Lauren's house half the way down. So that, I don't need to explain to you why that's like diabolical and fucked up, that she was trying to steal the will to kick Lauren out of her own home that she's lived in for 15 years. Speaking of, part 4, I don't know why I'm naming these parts. I did so many little interjections and this is pointless. Why am I still naming these things? So you have to let the, albeit accidental, arsonist who committed arson twice and let her baby sister take the fall for it both times after getting horrifically burned in the first fire walk free with no real consequences outside of community service in order to get the best possible ending. Like, her full-time job is already running a museum. Like, community service is what she does anyway. Like, Tegan let May take the fall for 2 separate fires, and May's reputation has been absolute dog shit in the community since the first fire. I don't know why, because again, she was 9 and a victim, but like, for the purposes of this game, I guess it's just going to be that way. But she let her sister suffer so much and almost get literally thrown in jail for a second fire, and when she didn't commit either. Your 9-year-old sister has already been convicted of arson once, and you're gonna let it fly again? She also spends so much time actively campaigning to evict Lauren from her home, who has lived there since she was 11, mind you. Plus, Tegan's ancestors, like, canonically enslaved Lauren's ancestors, so if we're talking about making choices based on reparations for our ancestors, let's fucking start there. And Tegan is still trying to kick Lauren out of her house despite knowing what her ancestors did to Tituba, and after she broke in trying to steal the will and set part of the house on fire. Like, this is genuinely supervillain shit. She's still trying to kick Lauren out of her house after all of that. Second chances, or lack thereof. I did not die once in this game, and that is a shame. So the second chance system in the Nancy Drew series was basically a way of including death sequences or death events, occurrences within the games without having heavy player consequence, right? Because they were aiming for a younger audience. So you could fail a puzzle or like do something too slow or whatever, and usually by the situation and the music it would be pretty clear that like you're in trouble, and or you just do something really stupid, and then you would get like a game over sequence, and then you would get sent back to the main menu and you would select second chance, and you'd start over from right before you made your mistake, and then you could do it again the right way, and you wouldn't lose any of your progress because it would checkpoint right before. In earlier games, second chance was one of the most charming parts of it, right? Because it was very forgiving, but still like provided that tension. But also it was really funny because you could get second chances for like the dumbest shit in the world, you know? The second chance system from previous Nancy Drew titles not only provided funny ways for Nancy to like die or get fired, and often in that sort of middle period there with the games, there was really funny like flavor text afterwards with like a good news, bad news kind of gimmick happening, but it could be pretty funny. It also provided some real tension, like I said, without making the game too unforgiving. If you messed up or died, you know, it was fine. You know, you got fired, whatever, start over. But you could retry as many times as you wanted with no consequences. And like, especially with the more horror-oriented titles, this meant the scare factor had a lot more weight that Midnight in Salem doesn't have. I think you can die in the game, specifically when the tunnels are flooding. I didn't, and I think it's one of, if not the only time in the game you can actually get a game over sequence. And I'm just saying, I think the Nancy Drew second chances are like part of the charm. I love it. Like in Secret of Shadow Ranch, I believe, like, if you pick the wrong tomatoes, you get a game over, because they fire you for being irresponsible and not respecting the harvest. Like, like, just cute things like that, you know, and things like that. There's just not that much character here, and I think I've bitched and moaned about there not being a lot of character in this game this entire video, but I think in particular, this is a very, like, succinct example of, like, a thing that's not really there the way it used to be, that provided a lot of that character and charm. Okay, so this is my little conclusion. Here we go. Despite the way I rip into Midnight in Salem in this video, I do sincerely want Her Interactive to succeed and recapture the magic the earlier games had. These games are obviously very special to me, and I'm a really big fan of, like, most of them. And I know the people at Her Interactive want to make good games, and I don't think they set out to be, like, evil, you know? But I'm just not sure the direction they took was the best way to get there. You know, a humongous part of the reason they struggled so much, in my opinion, is how slow they were to start selling on Steam and other online platforms. They sold physical discs and one-time downloads from their outdated, janky website that sometimes ate your fucking game, and this happened to me also when I was a kid, so I just bought the downloads from Amazon because at least then I got to keep the game I bought. But they did this for a very long time, even after most computers didn't have, like, disc players anymore, whatever they're called. I don't know. Like the physical copy was kind of, like, not a lot of people had computers that could even use those, and then their website was not good, and it's actually still bad. They haven't fixed it. The idea that, like, Steam taking a cut of the sales scared them, like, upper management, like, off of doing it, it stopped the whole company, I think, from, you know, actually participating in, like, the future of gaming and gaming distribution, and how it could actually improve their sales numbers so drastically. Because it was kind of hard to buy a Nancy Drew game. Like, you had to know where to look. And while the games are on Steam now, they still don't release on Steam right away. Like, Mystery of the Seven Keys came out May 7th, 2024, I believe, and didn't hit Steam until, like, June 20th. Like, they still do, like, a delay period. And, like, I don't think that helps. I think everyone's forgotten about your game by the time you take it to Steam. 'Cause, like, you're still exclusive. Like, it's such a bizarre thing to do. This isn't like those games that release on PS5 or something, and then, like, a year later they get distributed to PC. This is an exclusively PC release that you just withhold from random PC gaming platforms for, like, an arbitrary amount of time, with the idea that you can get 100% of the sales from the initial release, but nobody wants to use your janky website, and there's no point in buying physical copies anymore aside from novelty, or if you have a really old fucking computer. But if you have a computer that's old enough to have that, it probably isn't good enough to run the new game. Like, anyway, it's not good sales strategy. It really isn't. When Penny Milliken came on as CEO in 2014 after a period of the studio continuing game development with no CEO at all, which is sort of hilariously indicative of the lack of value that the CEO may or may not provide. She made a lot of people mad. I remember when this happened, because I was on Tumblr, on Nancy Drew Tumblr in 2014, and nobody likes Penny. Everyone calls her by her first name, and nobody fucking likes her. She's like an ex-Disney executive or something. She doesn't really have a background in game development, and I think a lot of people took note of that and didn't feel too jazzed about her leadership with the company. That said, I don't know her. I don't know her business like that. I can't say how well or how poorly she did objectively, just like stuff I've heard secondhand and whatnot. So I don't really want to like back the bus over her too hard. But you know, one thing is, you know how I mentioned in the beginning of this video that the voice actress for Nancy changed? The truth is, Milliken let the longtime voice actress for Nancy, Lani Minella, go. Like, fired her. Minella was reportedly disappointed by this and did not choose to leave of her own accord and, you know, had no plans of leaving. Her Interactive wanted to hire someone younger and more local to the Seattle area to cut costs, but it ended up angering fans across the board pretty much because everyone was really, really attached to Lani Minella. Milliken was also the one who pushed for the transition to Unity, seemingly without realizing that none of the staff had any experience with it, and it wasn't the kind of program one can learn to a professional degree in a month. Milliken had experience in the executive sphere and specialized in marketing, but she notably lacked experience in game development. Midnight in Salem was initially projected to be released in 2016, according to a fucking pipe dream. Also, at one point they said they were gonna do VR or something. It was atrocious. Everybody was really mad. Like, can you imagine? Nobody cared. This only pissed people off. They were like, why are you doing that? Okay. Nothing ever came of the VR thing, though. It never, and, like, obviously, I would have talked about it if it had, but, like, nothing. Like, that was just, like, a random, like, side quest detour that never came to fruition that they were doing for some reason. Her Interactive hit record levels of KG during Midnight in Salem's development, which damaged fan relations to a degree that I don't think will ever be fully repaired. For a pretty long stretch of time, everyone had given up on it ever coming out, so when it did, it was kind of underwhelming. It doesn't help that the creative team, the people responsible for everything people liked about the games, were primarily the people who got axed. The series has world building and lore and inside jokes, and all of that has a far, far diminished presence in the last two releases. Game development's hard, you know, it's an industry with a lot of money in it that's changing all the time, and no one is ever really right about anything they predict about it ever. Things get canceled, people get laid off. It's not sunshine and rainbows and people just being lazy, you know. But there was some severe mismanagement of resources and just bad general strategy at play here, I fear. And I do sincerely want more Nancy Drew games, and I want more games with character and fun and Nancy Drew from Her Interactive, because they were real good at that once upon a time. But I do fear if they'll ever be good at it again, if the people who were responsible for the magic all moved on to greener pastures after they got abruptly laid off. Anyway, Nancy Drew, I love you, and Midnight in Salem, they could never in a million years ever make me fucking like you.